I mean,
Yeah.
Israelis
But
aren't
who are they
kind of
targeting? You
sophisticated.
notice who they're targeting. It's the basic Israeli Bukharian people
Yeah,
who
that's
are
what I mean.
secular, who have no knowledge, who want to get a little bit, it's the guys with the ponytails and the earrings, and the people
Right.
who are, who are easily vulnerable to brainwash.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you're right. You said the yeshiva system, and I was thinking your average Israeli. Your average Israeli is a bit more primitive than your average American religious person, right? Just because they're really in a bubble. I mean, the stuff they believe. I remember Armon Yitzhak he had some sort of PowerPoint presentation when he was having his big 100-man conferences, where he said that Christian missionaries were going around door to door in Israel and taking out people's like mezuzot and putting crosses on them and then rolling them up and putting them back in. I mean, who believes that crap? Of course, Israelis will believe it because Israelis live in Israel. They don't know this.
How do you think the history is gonna play out in the future without a Messiah? Are we just gonna keep doing what we're doing? Because if there's no
Honestly,
Messiah, there is nothing, no temple. Like we're just gonna be
who
like this
says that?
forever.
Who says that? I mean, where does the Torah say that you need a Messiah to build a temple or a Mishkan? Nowhere. This whole notion of the Messiah is a much, much later developed idea.
But so we're just gonna be waiting here because we're gonna need some divine intervention to build the temple. We can't do it on our
Uh,
own.
maybe, yeah. I mean, how did they build it last time when they were in exile? This isn't our first exile,
That was
right?
through God
God,
intervening, though.
well, then God will have to intervene. But he brought up Ezra and he brought up Nehemiah and he's in some way nudged
Cyrus,
Cyrus. So
through
God,
prophets.
yeah, well, then it could happen. It could happen. I'm not dying to
I
see
mean,
another
if it was
temple
gonna
right now.
happen, it could have happened a long time ago.
Well, maybe Jews don't have their act together. I mean, it doesn't happen like it's counting down, right? It's going to happen when we repent properly. So maybe Jews should do like a heshbon nefesh. I mean,
Yeah,
kind
but
of
that's
like
never.
look inside.
Actually,
What?
that's never gonna happen.
Well, it happened in the past, but I mean,
That
how
was a
eager are
different.
you?
That was a different time.
So okay, all right. I mean, don't be a wet blanket here, like I said in my video. Let's be a little optimistic.
Where'd you?
On that topic, in terms of Israel and America, this idea, this hunger that people have, this fever to see the Messiah come tomorrow. I was mentioning this. I mentioned this in the video also. When the Messiah comes, we don't all have to go to Israel.
Yeah, I heard you say that. I was kind of
Yeah,
shocked when you said it.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure I shock you in many different ways too.
Pause.
So there's a misconception here that people repeat over and over. You should move to Israel because we're going to be all there when the Messiah comes. I mean, people never challenge this stuff. There's no halacha for people to live in Israel full time. Okay, the halacha is to go there 3 times a year. That's the halacha. Now we might want to visit. I'm
I
not
didn't know
sure,
that.
because that's what the Torah says.
Really? That's the first time I hear this. 3 times a
Yeah,
year?
there's only three
Wow.
times a year an obligation for people to go to Israel.
Oh,
So there's a debate between the Ramban and Nachmanides and the Rambam Maimonides on whether it's a mitzvah to live in the land of Israel. And I don't know if the Rambam puts up such a debate. He just doesn't mention it in his Sefer Mitzvot. While the Ramban has its own Sefer Mitzvot, which makes you think, right? But how can you have two books of commandments? Easy, because there's some commandments in one, and there's other commandments that the other person left out or included, which means that we can't agree. Heck, we can't agree which commandments make up the 613 commandments. How are we going to agree, who's the Messiah and what temple that we're going to settle on? So, according to the Ramban, Nachmanides teaches that it's a mitzvah to live in the land of Israel. So, there's a commentator to Sefer Mitzvot. It's called the Megillah Esther. It's not, that's what he happens to be called. I think Esther was his mother's name or something. The commentator, and he says that the reason the Rambam excludes it is because the Rambam only includes commandments in Sefer Mitzvot that are for all generations. So he believed that yes, initially we had a commandment to conquer the land, but that was only in play in the time of Yehoshua. And even back then, when they did conquer the land, there were many Jews who lived outside. And I would say that throughout Jewish history, the vast majority of Israelites lived outside of the land of Israel. Why? Because the truth is, living in Israel is not for everyone. It seems like if you're really from, right, like really you want your wife to shave her head and wear a wig and do all these things that appear nowhere in halakha, then okay, Israel should be like a mea sharim, like a geula for you. But if you just are happy with doing what the Torah requires, right, and not all the chumrot and dealing with all the crazy people, and there's a lot of crazy people in Jerusalem, live outside the land. but visit 3 times a year, right? I mean, go back to recharge your batteries, know where you came from. But, like if you're going to be in exile, Miami Beach is not a bad place to be.